Shirley deserved better. This cute redhead was a victim of not only Lelouch's actions, but the writers themselves. I get the impression that they didn't know what to do with her, so there are many examples of Shirley's role swapping from vital to irrelevant. Every time she gets close to something, the writers find a way to impede her progress. This bipolar writing plagues Geass in both R1 and R2. I could somewhat forgive R1 if R2 had a payoff, but of course, it didn't. Now, I've heard some people defend this by saying it's not about what Shirley did, but what she represents. Shirley represents the innocent life that Lelouch rejects by starting the rebellion. When Lelouch tried to recover his innocent life by dating Shirley, Rolo kills her in the next episode. I assume this is the story's way of showing that Lelouch can't have both a normal life with a traditional girlfriend while also following the path of blood. And the next defense is, you also have the idea that Shirley has influenced Lelouch's actions after awful things happened to her. After her death, Lelouch orders the massacre of the Geass order, as Lelouch tells C2. You said Geass is the power of the king. There can only be one king, so I alone shall have it. I will erase Rolo. I will erase Geass from all the others. Its power to make people sinful will be obliterated from this world. I owe that to Shirley. At the very least. It is also through Shirley that Lelouch realizes the consequence of his actions, like when he realized what he was doing was awful after learning he killed Shirley's father and Narita. These are fair points, but there's a problem here. None of these things are about what Shirley does. Instead, it's about what happens to her. I've often argued that it's great that Shirley impacts Lelouch's life, but what about her? What does she do? Why all the setup and no payoff? Maybe that's the point, that she represents how in real life things just don't go your way. But that's BS. Why? Because this isn't real life, this is a fictional story. So you can ruin the story by making everything realistic. I would also argue that Shirley's series of unfortunate events would qualify as unrealistic given how ridiculous it gets sometimes. And the plot was going in a certain direction, yet nothing happened. If you are on the fence about this argument, then let's go through together what happens to Shirley, including my analysis and why it wasn't great. And maybe after doing that, you'll have a stance on the issue, or your opinion on this topic will remain like Shirley's role in the story, only relevant when it's convenient for you. When I said that Shirley deserved better, this goes beyond her role in the story and applies to the writing itself. You'll see what I mean. The story introduces Shirley as a cute, innocent, cheerful redhead who has a crush on Lelouch. She's felt this way since freshman year in high school. Shirley is a shy girl, so she never made a move on Lelouch. We see later on that Shirley even keeps pictures of Lelouch in her room, but despite never making a move, she was very protective of him when it came to other women. Through the early episodes of R1, Shirley's attempts to ask him out all fail, except for one instance in stage 12 where Shirley asked Lelouch out to a concert using tickets she got from her father. All seemed to be going Shirley's way, but her father happened to be present at Narita. Just another victim of Lelouch's human-induced rock slide. Instead of getting ready for the date of her life, she instead has to confirm her dad's dead body. Lelouch arrives at the concert finding Shirley in the rain. What follows is one of the saddest moments in Code Geass. Shirley cries over the death of her father. She can't understand why Zero killed him. Shirley confirms with Lelouch that Zero fights for the innocent civilians, and she says that her father was innocent and gentle, so by Zero's own logic, he should not have killed her father. And that's why she's so confused. In desperation, Shirley reaches out to Lelouch for help, in which both characters share a passionate kiss. During her father's funeral, Shirley tells Lelouch to forget about the kiss. It was in the moment kind of thing. She finally got to kiss Lelouch, but in the worst circumstances. You can tell by her expression that Shirley isn't stable at the moment. Well, her mental state only gets worse when Valletta talks to Shirley privately. So not only did Zero kill her father, but now Shirley learns that Zero could be Lelouch. This means that the man she loved lied about being Zero and killed her father. Shirley, of course, doesn't believe this, but this changed at Port Yokozuka. It's there she witnessed Zero's helmet falling off, revealing him to be Lelouch all along. The next day, Shirley writes a letter about Lelouch, then heads to Narita. It's there that Shirley had the unfortunate circumstance of meeting Mao, a mind-reading Geass user who, of course, used that power against her. Why do these writers hate Shirley so much? Anyways, he convinces Shirley that she used her father's death to make a move on Lelouch and that she needs to be punished. He obviously projected his feelings of C2 onto her, especially when he said evil witch. After going through Shirley's underwear, Lelouch learns that she's at Narita, so Lelouch and C2 head to Narita. Skipping ahead a bit, at the end of the episode, Shirley and Lelouch have an emotional conversation together. Shirley is frantic right now, for there are too many things on her mind. Lelouch is Zero and her father's killer. She believed to have killed Valletta. She almost killed Lelouch, and just wanted him to love her. Lelouch decides to use Geass on her to erase him from her mind, thus preventing stuff like this from ever happening again. For the rest of R1, Shirley is no longer important to the story. Everyone plays along with the idea that Lelouch and Shirley are acting like strangers because of a fight. As the episodes progress, Shirley begins to realize that something's not right. She finds her discarded letter about Lelouch being Zero. There's even this scene where Shirley sees Lelouch defend Elevens, but this happens in the background. There is one exception where this side plot actually affects the main story, and that was in stage 24. When Lelouch takes over Ashford Academy, Shirley said to Colin and to him that they did something to her. Colin, of course, has no idea what she's talking about, and Lelouch simply does what he always does, ignores her. After Lelouch leaves, it becomes clear that Shirley knows that Lelouch is involved with the Black Knights on some level. And we know this because she tells the student council that Zero won't hurt them because of her, and tells Tamaki later on that we are important to Zero, so do not hurt us. Of course, the jackass didn't listen anyways. It is quite clear that this memory subplot seemed to be going somewhere, but then R2 happens. Charles used Geass on Shirley, as well as the rest of the student council, but in Shirley's case, he implanted false memories, causing her to act as she did at the start of R1. This was one of the many things done as part of the soft reboot to start R2. Shirley doesn't do a whole lot in R2. She goes on a fake date with Lelouch in turn 3, gives him relationship advice in turn 11, and fights with him at the start of turn 12, because Lelouch was avoiding Shirley through dating other girls. Oh, at the end of turn 11, Sayako disguised as Lelouch kissed Shirley. I like the parallels with their kiss in stage 12. It's obviously not the same since it wasn't Lelouch there. What I don't like is how the next episode handles it, choosing comic relief instead of taking it seriously. Yes, it came up towards the end, but it was a significant plot point that the story didn't seem to take too seriously, especially when you consider Shirley's mental state and how she looked at the end of stage 11. On a positive note about R2, at least in the story, Lelouch and Shirley actually started dating. This occurred at the end of turn 12. This would have happened in R1 had Lelouch not killed her father at Narita. But it ultimately doesn't matter because a convenient Geass canceller activation restores Shirley's save state to right before Lelouch erased her memories in stage 14. And then we get to the worst part of Shirley's story, her death. I know that R2's writing isn't the best at times, but my god, did it fail here, and not just narratively speaking, but also the characters as well. So Shirley meets with Suzaku at the train station, and I'll give them credit because they show that Shirley has PTSD in thinking that Suzaku looks like Mao. They also run into Lelouch, who happened to be testing the Geffen disturbers on the trains. Obviously, Shirley and Suzaku didn't know that, but after seeing Lelouch, they all decide to hang out. During their walk on top of a building, they reach the dividing point between the ghetto and the settlement, where Lelouch and Suzaku both point out that this has to end. Shirley then freaks out, thinking that Lelouch and Suzaku could be working together. She then attempts to commit suicide. It took the combined efforts of both Lelouch and Suzaku to save her. Editor chops here. There will be those who say that Shirley didn't attempt self-deletion. You could argue that Shirley just panicked and only walked to the edge of the building to escape, only falling by accident. But consider these two things. 1. Shirley could have run away in the other direction from Suzaku and Lelouch. She didn't need to put herself in serious danger. 2. Lelouch freaked out Shirley when he caught her. She wanted him to let go, which would have obviously killed her. Lelouch needed to convince her to live, so that would qualify as a self-deletion attempt. Now, if you're still not convinced, then we can at least agree that Shirley's actions show her mental instability. It was wrong of Lelouch and Suzaku to downplay it by not getting her help. a point that I will bring up later. Anyways, back to the video. After some fun banter, Lelouch later on gets a call from Rolo about Jeremiah, so he has to go deal with him, leaving Shirley to Suzaku. He figured that keeping Shirley with Suzaku would be the safest place, but boy was he wrong. Suzaku and Shirley go off on their own and share a conversation that was just so poorly written that it just hurts. Shirley tells Suzaku that he can't forgive Lelouch simply because he can't, and mentioned that she forgave him. At this point, the writers make Suzaku look like an idiot. Suzaku doesn't ask Shirley about her memories. We know he's aware of the memory tampering, and he was even going to say something, then Jeremiah happened, forcing him to leave. Just another example of Shirley's character getting in the way of the plot again, I guess. Now, Suzaku knows that Shirley's unstable right now. I mean, she literally tried to kill herself a few moments ago. With that in mind, Suzaku leaves her with the police without making sure she got in the car. I understand that there were other matters that had to be attended to, but Suzaku could have waited a few minutes before leaving. His negligence is never brought up here. Suzaku's actions here are even worse than you realize. Let's take a step back and analyze the situation here. If Suzaku knows that Shirley is mentally unstable and a danger to herself, why didn't he take her to a hospital? And I even blame Lelouch for not suggesting it. They shouldn't have had the fun slice-of-life moment and instead have immediately taken her to the hospital and called her mother. What's even going on right now? The story downplaying Shirley's suicide attempt is frustrating and insulting. But wait, it gets even worse. So when Shirley leaves to find Lelouch, she runs into Rolo. And this conversation is like the one with Suzaku, with more awful writing. I wish she had just listened to her own advice from stage 22. Shirley never asked Rolo who the hell he is to begin with. She just got her memories back and knows that Lelouch has a sister, not a brother, which is what Lelouch pointed out in turn 2. Now, you can argue that maybe Shirley didn't know that, but why she never tries to learn about Rolo is frustrating. So instead, the story just has her ask Rolo about loving Lelouch. When he says that I'm his brother, so of course I love him, Shirley again could have said, wait, how? Anyways, the conversation is at least going well, with Shirley just expressing her desire to help Lelouch. But then, things go sideways as Shirley does two stupid things. 1. Tells Rolo that she wants to bring the happiness back into Lelouch's life. And 2. Saying the N-word. You know, Nunnally. What were you thinking? Rolo is very angry at this point and used Geass to make Shirley kill herself. That's probably what happened since her death was ruled a suicide. Oh, and while not relevant, it's frustrating to hear Suzaku's confusion on Shirley committing suicide. He can't believe she would do that and assumed it was Lelouch. Is your memory working right? Not too long ago, you saw this same girl run frantically away from you and jump off a building. She also initially refused any help. Why would your first assumption be that Lelouch killed her and not that she killed herself? You know about her memories, you stupid piece of shit. Anyways, I have defended Suzaku in the past, but I can't defend this ridiculous level of stupidity. Back in the story, Lelouch arrives too late to save Shirley, and the two have a final conversation. It was both heartfelt and depressing, and ended with Shirley dying as Lelouch screams into the void. I know we just went over some deep stuff, but if you're enjoying this video and want more like it, please leave a like. And if not for me, do it for her. I mean, Shirley has suffered so much, the least you can do is give one like for her. That's all I ask. Anyways, back to this one. When I first watched this scene over a decade ago, I was left with sadness. But now on repeated viewings, it just makes me angry. I now ask myself questions like, is this it? Was this really all you had planned for her? And with this in mind, we can now segue into why Shirley deserved better. Let's first start with her death. Here's the thing. I am not against the idea of Shirley dying in the story. It's the context behind it that bothers me, which is how I feel about another series. We never learn why the writers decided to go with this approach. It seemed like something important was supposed to happen, but ultimately never does. I have two theories. 1, the writers didn't know how to handle Shirley recovering her memories in the story, so killing her fixes that issue, and 2, they wanted to push Colin as the third person in the love triangle because she's more popular, and it might explain why Colin starts to have more romantic feelings for Lelouch in Art 2. But since we don't know why they killed her off, let's instead focus on the consequence of Shirley's role in the story. Does Shirley's death really matter? Following her death, the story references Shirley's death 4 times. In turn 14, Lelouch vows to wipe out the Geass order so no one else ends up like Shirley. Lelouch takes full responsibility for Shirley's death during his conversation with Suzaku in turn 17. At the end of turn 19, Lelouch realizes that losing the Black Knights, Nunnally, Rolo, and Shirley was a part of his punishment. During the Ragnarok connection, Suzaku notes that Shirley didn't say anything about Zero's identity. By the way, this proves that Suzaku understood Shirley's situation and acted like an idiot in turn 13. I wish Lelouch shared my anger with Suzaku for his negligence that led to Shirley's death. What bothers me is that Shirley's death could have had a bigger impact on the story. As I said, it was just fuel to motivate Lelouch's actions. What about Shirley? What does she get out of this? Why doesn't she get to help out Lelouch? I know May don't like her role in the alternative universe, but at least she does something. The bar is so low that I consider this to be a major upgrade over her role in the original anime. And remember that Shirley goes through bad event after bad event. It's so frequent that it becomes ridiculous. Nobody has this kind of bad luck. Did the writers just hate Shirley? Or didn't know how to write someone with misfortune? Obviously, we don't know the answer to this question, but what we do know is how they handled Shirley in this situation was just awful. People have often wondered how much better things would have been had Shirley worked with Lelouch in the Black Knights. There was this Geass Code story, but that wasn't the greatest attempt at it. If you want a video on my ideas on how to fix Shirley, let me know in the comment section below. Now, some of you might say that Shirley not having a large role was the point, that she was just supposed to be an innocent victim of Lelouch's evil deeds. That's fine, but where I disagree here is if there really wasn't anything planned for her, then why not just have Lelouch kill her at the end of stage 14 like he discussed he was going to in the epilogue? Now, this might sound cruel, but consider this. If Lelouch takes responsibility for Shirley's death in turn 17, then what's the difference between killing her in stage 14 or in turn 13 if Lelouch was going to kill her anyways? Was her role supposed to be important later on? I guess we'll never know for sure. Now here's something else to consider. I like Shirley and Lelouch as a couple, like the next person, but looking at this objectively, it's weird that she still wants to be with him despite killing her father. Yes, he apologized, but does that really matter? Regardless if Lelouch believed to be helping Shirley, you have to consider that his actions were awful, which then calls into question Shirley's actions after reclaiming her memories. Shirley forgave him too quickly when maybe she shouldn't have at all. Is there a reason why her role couldn't have shifted to something beyond a love interest to Lelouch? I am annoyed that the writers couldn't commit to having them as a couple throughout the story. If they didn't want to do this, then don't do this. Instead, change her role in the story. You can have a situation where a character grows and learns to find their own path, and realizes that the thing they wanted wasn't best for them. But no, we can't have nice things. Instead, she starts out as someone who had a crush on Lelouch, and only goes one step beyond that, where she declares her love for him. Every time I think about Shirley, it eventually comes back to my thoughts on her wasted potential, a character that was written off in the most frustrating of ways. We at least have Shirley's role in the alternative universe, even if it was poorly explained. There are also people online who have made fan art to show what could have been, and now you know why Shirley deserved better. We briefly touched on how Lelouch and Shirley's romantic relationship evolved in the story. If you want the full breakdown, check out this video right here.